Hi everybody, Kelsey and Lovelady here, back again with my part 2 of how to use Dungeons and Dragons to write a book. And this is the second part of the character creation. This video is going to be a lot shorter because the last 2 pages of the character creation process are a lot simpler than the first one. So let's get started. This is the second page of the character creation sheets in Dungeons and Dragons. Um, this is where you start thinking more about what your character looks like and what their background is. So, just to refresh your memory, my character is Celeste Bellicose, a level 8 wizard. She is 21 years of age, and I just wanted her to be that when the book started. Height and weight. If you have an actor or an idea of what your character looks like, you can fill in these numbers yourself. Or if you want to be more randomized and probably run the more less used ends of the height and weight spectrums for your character, you can use the Dungeons and Dragons formula. Now, for Dungeons and Dragons, when you're trying to determine height, there's a predetermined height depending upon your race. In the case of a human, it's 4'8". And then what you do is you roll 2d10. That's two 10-sided dice to add to that 4'8" height. I happen to roll a 17, so Celeste turned out to be 6'3", so she's a tall girl. And then, to determine weight, you take that number that you rolled to add to your character's height, and then you multiply it by 2d4. That's two 4-sided dice. I think I rolled a 7 on those d4, so 17 times 7 was 119 pounds, added to the predetermined 110 pounds for a human. So Celeste is both a tall girl and either an obese girl or a very muscly girl. Take your pick. You can determine height and weight however you like. Then you determine eye color, skin color, hair color. Pretty straightforward, whatever you like. Over on the left side of the page is where you either use a picture of the actor that you would see playing your character, or you can just draw one and put one in there, whatever you like. And then over to the right of the picture is where you talk about allies and organizations that are connected to the character. This is where you talk about family members, friends, enemies, groups that they're a part of, groups that they've been kicked out of, whatever you like. So as you can see, I have Celeste's parents. Her father is deceased, her mother is alive, but there's just not a lot of information about her because it's been a while. Down here are Diane Hancock, Vivian Pope, and Shore Thacker. Those are her roommates, her friends, and her students. These are also wizards in training. Reverend Eli Hopkins is an enemy, and an enemy from a long time ago is Adonis. She doesn't know what happened to this guy. The last time she saw him, she was performing an exorcism basically on him. So she doesn't know where he is. Far as she knows, he could be dead. And she is a part of the Coven of the Time Witches, which, since there's no witch class in Dungeons and Dragons, I used wizard as that class. And over here is where I would put the symbol for the Coven of the Time Witches. And you can just put the name up there. I know I spelled it wrong. I was kind of in a hurry. Over here is where you put additional features and traits. Now, if you remember your first Dungeons and Dragons page, additional features and traits is where you put things that your character can do based off of their class and their level within the class. If your character is a very high level, you're not going to have enough room in that box that was on the first page, so you just put them over here. And sometimes you learn extra feats based off of how high in the level you get, so that's what you just put here. That's why it's empty, because Celeste doesn't have that many features and traits yet. Over here is character backstory. Now, I know Celeste's backstory, but that would be spoilers for something I'm working on, so I didn't fill it in. However, if you don't know your character's backstory, or you don't know where they're supposed to fit in this story, the bottom box titled Treasure can really help you. There's a page in the Dungeons and Dragons handbook that has 100 items, and you're supposed to roll a 100-sided dice to determine what treasures your characters have. Now, I don't have a 100-sided dice, but I have 2 d10s. One is a normal d10 that goes from, 1 to 10. But the other d10 is a percentile dice. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it goes 10, 20, 30, 50, all the way up to 100. You're supposed to use these in situations where you need to roll above or below a certain percentage for something to happen. Like growing a beard. Yes, that is something that can happen. Watch Critical Role, seriously. But what treasure your character has can inform their backstory. So the way that I do it is I roll my d10 equal to the number of levels that the character is. Celeste is a level 8 wizard, so she gets 8 items. Now, I changed some of these things because in 21st century America, some of the things that are in the Dungeons and Dragons handbook don't exist. Like this vial of lizard blood, it was originally a vial of dragon blood. The black gemstone was actually a gemstone that only looks like a gemstone to her, but looks like a lump of coal to everybody else. So I just cut down the middle. But if you don't know what your character's background is, these can inform the backstory. Like one of the items in the Dungeons and Dragons handbook is an invitation to a party where a murder happened. Well, that says a lot because the person could have been accused of the murder even though they're innocent and they're fighting to prove their innocence. Or they are a relative of the person who died and they are hunting down the murderer to make them face justice. Whatever. Literally, the treasure can inform the backstory if you don't know it. So, that page is pretty straightforward. Moving on to the final page. This page is only important to spellcasters. So, if you're a class that doesn't use spells like barbarians, you pretty much don't have to worry about this. But I'm going to go through it anyways and explain everything. So, since Celeste is a wizard, her spellcasting class is wizard. Pretty straightforward. Spellcasting ability. Depending upon which spellcasting class you are, you have a different spellcasting ability. In the case of wizards, they use their intelligence ability. Now, Celeste had an intelligence of 16, so her spellcasting ability is 16. However, bard characters use their charisma ability. So, that's how that changes. The spell save DC. Now, this is what your opponents have to roll in order to beat your spell. They have to get a number higher than the DC to not be affected by whatever spell you put on them. So, how do you find the spell DC? Actually, let me look in the character handbook because I don't actually offhand remember it. I'm just, I thought I had it memorized and then turns out I don't. Looking. Okay, here we go. In the case of a wizard, the spell save DC is 8 plus the proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. Now that, of course, is going to change based off of your class. For a bard, it's probably 8 plus proficiency bonus plus charisma modifier. But in Celeste's case, she has a spell save DC of 14 because it's 8 plus a proficiency bonus of 3 plus a intelligence modifier of 3. Now, spell attack bonus is what you add to your d20 roll when you cast a spell on someone that is an attack. And for a wizard, to find your spell attack modifier, you just do your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. For a bard, it will be their proficiency bonus plus their charisma modifier. So that's basically how that works. I know it's a little confusing, but the player's handbook is pretty straightforward about it. Now we move on to the actual spells of the class. These are pretty straightforward. Cantrips are basically 0 level spells, and anything above that are like spell level 1, spell level 2, spell level 3. And depending upon your spellcasting class and what level you are in that class, you have spell slots for each level spell. Now, spell slots mean you can use as many of that spell level in one day. So like Celeste has 4 spell slots for level 1 spells, which means she can use all 4 of these level 1 spells in one day. But after that, she's done, she's out. And she needs to rest for 8 hours to get all of her spell slots back. None of the spells in Dungeons and Dragons were really time related, so I went with the fact that she's very protective of her students to inform what spells she would have. So she has stuff like Alarm and Protect from Evil and Dimension Door, Detect Thoughts, all to protect her kids, her students. But you'll also notice that there are these little dots next to some of the spells. In certain spellcasting classes, in order for you to use the spells, you have to learn them. What that means is that before you go and take an 8-hour rest, your character has to look through their spell book and memorize the spell for the next day. Now, how do you decide how many spells you get to learn for the next day? Because you don't get to learn all of them. You'll notice that Misty Step is not one that Celeste has learned for the day because she can't learn that many spells for a day. In the case of the wizard and with other things, you learn as many spells that is equal to your class level plus your proficiency modifier. So in Celeste's case, that's 8 plus 3. So what does it mean when you don't learn a spell? Well, it just means that you can't use it. Right now it doesn't look like a problem because Celeste can learn and use all of her spells save for 1. But as she gets higher up in level, she's going to learn more spells and she's going to have to be selective. And the thing about this is that you have to basically anticipate what is going to happen in the next 24 hours. What am I going to need? Am I going to go fight an ancient red dragon, so I'm going to need that 9th level spell? Or are we going out shopping, so I'll learn everything up through my 3rd level spells? You have to be really, really selective about this as you get higher up in the ranks. Now, you'll notice that there are no dots next to the cantrips. Well, that's because they are 0 level spells. They don't require much. They don't require much work, much energy. So you can use those as many times in one day as you like. That's the basic spellcasting system in the Dungeons and Dragons world, and that is the entirety of character creation. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, why did we just go through all of this? What is the point of using these character creation sheets? Well, they are going to help us immensely when we start getting to the outlining process, which is what I'm going to review in my next video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!